The Joe Rogan Experience.
Please tell people your credentials, what your background is.
So, my name is Ryan Graves. I have an engineering degree, mechanical and aerospace engineering. I promptly left doing that to go fly F-18s for the Navy as soon as I graduated college. Did that for about a decade, both operationally in combat as well as in an instructor role, teaching the new students. And we did witness something while we were flying in our jets, but we were doing it we witnessed it in the context of our just everyday flying and our missions.
And what year was it that you witnessed it?
So we started seeing these in 2014 was the earliest that I know. 2013, late 2013, early 2014.
Could you describe what was the very first experience?
Yeah, so for me personally, the experience was simply just flying out to the area like I would any other day. And instead of seeing an empty airspace with just my wing person or another squadron doing something a different block, there were all of a sudden a lot of different radar contacts, which is immediately a problem because, we could be hitting one of those or someone working in our area. And this was happening because we upgraded our radar the best we could tell. We were in a earlier radar called the APG-73, and we had come back from deployment. We entered a maintenance phase, it's called. We kind of do a little bit less flying, upgrade the jets if we need to, do any long-lasting maintenance, and we upgraded to the APG-79, which was a much better radar.
And what is the difference in the abilities of the upgraded radar system versus the original system?
So, kind of practically speaking, it's like going from an analog TV essentially to like an OLED. It's, a modern tool compared to more of like an analog classical radar that has more limited range and has less ability to track multiple targets and things of that nature. So just generally speaking, we would expect to see, more objects if there were any out there or smaller objects, but there shouldn't have been any objects out there.
And so how far offshore are you when this is all going down?
Our working areas start about 10 miles off the coast, and then it goes out 100 or 250 miles or so, though we don't usually use those far eastern areas. But we would only see them over the water. So they would really only be in our working areas, maybe slightly, in between the working area and land, but never over the land, sometimes over the bays that are in the area that are quite large, but never just kind of zooming west over land or anything like that.
And restricted airspace?
It's not. So that's a tricky question. For us operating in a military operating area, it is not restricted in the sense that you have to be, there's only one person allowed in there. You could have these little Cessnas kind of bumbling in there, but they would get called out pretty quick, both from the kind of air traffic control agency that's working out there, as well as the F-18s and the other aircraft that may be working out there. But in a broader sense, when we look at it in relation to our air defense identification zone, which is essentially a band of airspace that surrounds our entire country, if your flight path originates out over the water outside of that ADIZ and you proceed into that ADIZ, into our controlled airspace, then you do have to essentially have permission to enter that airspace. It's not a restricted airspace like a traditional bombing range, but it is protected airspace. It's our coastal air.
So you have this upgraded radar system, and what are you detecting?
So on the radar, really what we can learn from that is essentially the kinematics of the object. So where is it essentially, and what direction is it going, how fast is it going, things of that nature. We can't necessarily make out the shape or things of that nature. So it's a representation. It's like a block on our screen to show that information. And so when we see that on our radar, we can tell, where it's located, perhaps what's located around it if there's other objects we're detecting, how fast it's going, what direction it's pointed in, what direction it's traveling in. So we call that velocity vector. So if we see this essentially little circle, have a tail coming off of it. And that tail kind of represents the nose of the vehicle, at least as its flight path is going. And so with that, we would typically see an aircraft just kind of trudging along with a straight line, taking occasional turns. But these objects had a little bit more of a, I don't want to say random, but more less controlled flight path. That velocity vector would kind of jump around a bit more. They would not proceed in like a perfectly straight line as you would imagine like a flight navigation computer would take you, right? It takes you from A to B in the straightest line possible. These objects seem to kind of be moving in a direction that was not a straight line, but generally proceeding in that direction. And so they would kind of be meandering slightly, but moving in that general direction, both three-dimensionally and horizontally.
So being around, going up, going down.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not on a flat plane, and they're not going in a straight line.
I don't want to draw too many firm statements like that, because we would see them being flat too. We'd see them perfectly stationary up there, regardless of the wind.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow.
Oh, gosh. I mean, at altitude, you can have anywhere up to 100, 120 knots of airspeed.
What is that in miles per hour?
It's about 100, 130, 140 miles an hour.
So they're completely stationary with 140 mile an hour wind.
Confusing to me as well. Even if we had something that could just burn that much energy, right? Like if you had a sphere surrounded by little rockets, right? Just imagining something right now.
Okay.
And if you wanted to keep that perfectly stationary, right, against gravity, you could just fire all the rockets at the bottom really fast and hopefully keep it flat, right?
Right.
It's going to have tiny little variations. And then if you have wind hitting it and all this, you could potentially have those rockets try to counter it, but it would never be perfectly still in winds like that.
Because it's not perfectly still either, right?
Exactly.
It changes and varies.
It does. So it's like it's the wind. It's not even really fighting the wind, it seems. You know, it just seems like it's just there in a way.
So the first time you see these things, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, the first time really was, well, you know, what is this, right? It's not a UFO or something mysterious at this point. It's at what we're thinking at this point we see on the radar is just, well, our radar is broken, right? These perhaps don't represent physical objects yet because we hadn't, you know, visually seen these or seen them on our camera yet. And so, you know, we kind of like, hey, you know, what's going on here? You know, is anyone else seeing this kind of thing? But not really like investigating it, right? It's just kind of like, all right, there was stuff out there, but maybe next time we'll take a look. But the way our systems work, when we have all these contacts on our radar, and if we kind of just select one out with our little cursor there, all our sensors go to it. Our FLIR goes to it, which is our camera system. All our weapons, they have like their own little eyes in some sense, and they all look in that direction. And so eventually, you know, someone had one of these selected and flew close enough so that as they look at their FLIR system, their camera, they could see something that was at the spot represented on the radar, right? So there was something there.
So they were seeing it visually with eyes?
Not at this point, just on the FLIR system.
The FLIR system.
And so it's a regular camera and also an infrared camera. And so typically we'll roll around in infrared just because it returns a better image, typically. So yeah, you know, it didn't look like an object they were seeing on the FLIR. It just looked like a source of IR energy in a sense, almost as if someone was shining a flashlight. But something had to be there to be reflecting that energy or creating it. So at this point, to answer your question, now we're like, okay, this isn't just an error in our radar. This is perhaps, you know, we're thinking this is real. We have to really respect this as like a safety hazard now. Even if it's just a small, you know, however small ribbon of tinfoil, right? Like that suck down the engine can still take out an aircraft, right? So we have to be very respectful of that.
Like a balloon type thing? But how fast are these things going?
So sometimes stationary, right? Sometimes they would be going around 0.6 to 0.8 Mach, which is at altitude about, you know, 240 to maybe 330 knots, you know, around there.
So we're in the range of an airplane.
A fighter aircraft would be kind of flying around at those airspeeds, except sometimes they would be perfectly stationary as well.
Right. It's not exhibiting any sort of patterns that you've recognized in the past.
No, they have actually. So,
But not stationary, no, right?
With the stationary, no. With the meandering kind of flight path, no. But I would also see them essentially fly what we call a racetrack pattern. And essentially what that means is they fly in a straight path, and then they do like a 180-degree turn in a certain direction. Then they fly a straight path, then turn again. You know, so that's what we call a racetrack pattern as opposed to a circular holding pattern. We did witness racetrack patterns. In fact, I think there's been some cases off the West Coast just the past couple of weeks where people have also been observing objects flying in racetrack patterns high at altitude with lights. So I do recognize that behavior, but I don't necessarily think that means we have to attribute it to normal behavior necessarily. That type of flight path is important because it's a very efficient way to fly, right? If you have to maintain the position in a certain area, You want to minimize how much you're turning. Because anytime you're turning in an aircraft, you're using more energy than if you were just flying straight and level. And so by having a racetrack pattern, it's an efficient way of holding in a position by maximizing straight and level time and minimizing your turn time.
And how long would these things stay up there for?
So from my experience, from our experience, and again, we weren't studying these, but they were always out there. You know, they were
Always.
out there when we took off, we'd see them, and then we go to land, they would still be out there.
Like every day?
Every day.
Every day.
Every day.
So you guys go from not having any idea that these things are out there to an upgraded radar system to seeing them every day. What is the thought? Like, how are you feeling when these, like, is there an evolution of the thought pattern of how you're addressing these things and thinking about them? Initially, you're thinking they're errors. When do you start getting a thought that, like, what the fuck is this thing?
So that happened when we visually saw one. And the first time we visually saw one, the object was directly at what we call the entry point of the area. So, you know, that box that I told you about in the sky that starts 10 miles off the coast, there's a particular GPS, you know, location and altitude where incoming traffic will fly in, and outbound traffic will fly in the exact same spot, but will fly out 1,000 feet lower. There were 2 aircraft from my squadron, VFA 11, and they flew, took off as a flight of 2. That means they're essentially flying in a formation like this. And as they hit the area, one of these objects went right between the aircraft. The lead air crew saw the object. The Dash 2 aircraft crew did not, which is not surprising because they're usually, you know, you're very focused on flying formation. You're just staring right at that aircraft. The lead really has actual leeway to look around. So he saw it, and, you know, he immediately came back. I have to assume he didn't have it on his radar because he wouldn't have flown through this object at the entrance point. He turned around, flew back, landed, and I was in the ready room when he come back, and, you know, he had all his gear on, which typically is not a good thing because you want to get that stuff off as fast as possible. So usually means, you know, there's a problem of some nature. And, you know, he was just sitting there saying, hey, you know, I almost hit one of those damn things. And we all knew what he was referring to, even though we didn't necessarily have a name for it, just because we were seeing these so much. And he described it. You know, he described it just as a black or dark gray cube, and that cube was inside of a clear or translucent sphere. And essentially, the apex or the corners of that cube, best he could tell, were touching that inside of that sphere.
That description mirrors many of the descriptions that people have had of these, whatever you want to call them. Whether they're calling them UAPs now for some strange reason. UFOs is I don't know, does it have a dirty connotation to it? And is it tainted because of so many crazy people talk about UFOs? Is that what it is?
With a lot of assumptions baked in.
It baked in. So that's something, but whatever it is, that is a design that people have reported seeing before. That this translucent sphere and this cube, can you see through the cube?
Not to my understanding, no.
Some sort of solid black cube that's inside this translucent sphere, and it's just floating around and flying around the sky.
So, you know, that's a good point. Is it floating around? Is it flying around? It's doing both, which is strange, right? Because you could think of that description and go, okay, that's kind of some kind of weird balloon maybe with stuff in it. And that's certainly, you know, one way. If you just view that angle of it, then it seems explainable. But when that, you know, the balloon-like object starts cruising around at, you know, 0.8 Mach, you know, that nullifies that particular idea. And you'll see that a lot, where it's not just like that one picture, that one behavior. It's really, you kind of have to zoom out a bit and look at everything in relation to each other and say, okay, why is this weird? You know, okay, it was hanging out in a racetrack pattern. That's not exotic. But when you learned it was doing it for, you know, perhaps 13 hours.
13 hours?
You know, perhaps they were out there all the time, you know. So, you know, I land and I go back. And we weren't on a intel mission to analyze these, right? We're going to do our training. It's very expensive, $30K an hour to fly these things, right? So really the only time we can put energy into looking at these things is when we're kind of transiting back and forth or waiting for a fight to start. And so, you know, it's never like a dedicated analysis.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
When did you get interested in the subject of UFOs?
That happened at a surprisingly early age. I was 7 years old, at a boarding school, and the principal of the school, a friend of his, had photographed video, an old reel-to-reel Kodak movie camera, had taken a home movie of a video of a UFO flying in beautiful blue skies, cumulus clouds, huge golden disc that comes into the picture and banks, goes into a cloud, and it disappears into this sort of wispy cloud in a way that would be very, very hard, I think, to fake somehow, particularly in those days with no computer-generated imagery. And it comes out the other side and then sort of goes off over the horizon. And I was, stunned and flabbergasted, and myself and all the other kids ran outside that night and were looking at the stars, and it just sparked my curiosity, a lifelong curiosity.
Once you got into government, and once you were there, you're basically there, you had to start asking questions like, did you wait a while? Like, how long did you ask for?
Sure did.
Hey, what do you guys know?
Well, for a long time I waited. Very rarely. I looked for openings. I looked for opportunities. So, for example, the stigma is so great that you're reluctant, obviously, to raise that issue. A couple times there were some natural opportunities. So one of my colleagues on the Intelligence Committee was going to Hawaii for some oversight trips, meetings, and he went to the Maui Space Optical Tracking Facility. And I said to him, while you're there, why don't you just check and see, do they ever see anything weird they can't explain and so forth? So he did, and Pete called me up and said, hey, you wouldn't believe this. I've got this videotape here, and it shows these weird things. And so I talked to the Air Force people. They sent the tape to us. Turns out it was totally unclassified. I showed it to Senator Cohen and some others, and it ended up on national TV, actually, but didn't generate any further response. Everybody just kind of threw their hands up in the air and said, well, that's interesting, but we don't know what to do with it. It was Ted Koppel's Nightline show that this tape was played on. It showed sort of 5 objects moving parallel to the ground, possibly in formation. They're in the atmosphere because they're burning, they're interacting with something. There's plasma coming off them, which wouldn't presumably be happening in space, but they seem to be too slow to be meteorites. So it was mystifying and difficult to explain, never did get an answer. Occasionally something like that would happen, but by and large, the issue almost never arose.
The issue is a weird issue because if you bring it up in the wrong company or at the wrong time, you could be dismissed as a loon. Did you feel that when you were there, as a person who had a budding interest in unidentified flying objects and what have you? Did you feel like this is a politically risky thing to discuss, especially to discuss in serious terms? Do you believe in these things? What are they? What do we know? Was that an issue?
Absolutely. I concealed my interest in the topic for years and very carefully, and confided to a few trustworthy friends, had a few heart-to-heart talks with a couple individuals when I found a fellow traveler who was interested in this topic, but by and large, absolutely wanted to conceal that and not reveal that.
Clinton?
No, I did not.
He would be the guy that I would go to.
There was a request that came to me once that I think was from President Clinton, and it was one of the astronauts claimed to have seen a UFO out at Edwards Air Force Base, and it was videotaped, he said, and he described this in his memoir and wanted the president to get hold of the tape of the video. And Secretary Cohen came back to the Pentagon from a meeting, and a message came down to me to go to try to find this tape. And unfortunately, there was I got nowhere with that. The Air Force was adamant that there was no such tape, there was no such information. Anything they had on UFOs had been destroyed. So I had one of these situations that's very common in this area, which is you have just 2 apparently credible sources, but utterly conflicting, irreconcilable information, which seems to happen often in this field.
Being as you were in government and very close to literally the machine that runs the world, what's the general perception when people are discussing these things in Washington? What's the general perception of what's going on with these things?
I'm happy to say that it's changed. That perception has changed considerably in the last few years. People feel like they have permission to talk about it.
When did you?
And after the New York Times article and subsequent press, beginning in 2017, December 2017, and that sort of gave people permission to talk about this. And I've actually had Pentagon friends who said, this is kind of cool. We don't have to go in the closet to talk about this anymore.
What do you kept it in the closet before? Like, when did the stigma start? And do you think this was like intentionally sort of set up this way?
It was. It was the Robertson Panel Commission, 1953, and they concluded during those Cold War days that this was a potential threat to national security because UFO reports might overwhelm our air defense and communication system, and that the Soviets might spook the public and somehow manipulate this issue. So they actually advocated in writing that this issue be debunked and discredited, and the government went ahead and did so extremely successfly, unfortunately.
And this started with the Project Blue Book, correct?
Correct. It was during that era.
So what was the gentleman's name that was running Project Blue Book again?
Well, they were
went
the
on
astronomer, Alan Hynek.
Hynek.
Yeah.
And Hynek went on to become a believer. So he started debunking and was told, essentially, the way he reported it was that he was told to kind of debunk every single case. Everything he could find, whether it was swamp gas or, ball lightning, find some way to explain this away. But then once he left Project Blue Book, he started openly discussing these cases, and he started discussing his own belief.
Correct. And he felt badly burned as well because he was trying to carry out his mandate that the Air Force had given him. As you may recall, in one instance, he went to Michigan and famously declared that the people of Michigan were misconstruing swamp gas for flying objects.
Yeah.
And so Gerald Ford, who was representing that district, got incensed, as did the local population, and Congress took a fleeting interest in the topic. And Dr. Hynek was very embarrassed, and understandably so. It was really quite insulting to these people who had very clear sightings of these objects. So he did eventually change his view publicly and was very critical of Project Blue Book.
Catch new episodes of The Joe Experience for free only on Spotify. Watch back catalog JRE videos on Spotify, including clips. Easily, seamlessly switch between video and audio experience. On Spotify, you can listen to the JRE in the background while using other apps and can download episodes to save on data costs, all for free. Spotify is absolutely free. You don't have to have a premium account to watch new JRE episodes. You just need to search for the JRE on your Spotify app. Go to Spotify now to get this full episode of The Joe Rogan Experience.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
With Grush, I think, here's my take on it. I think he believes what he's saying, right? I think he has gone out there. I think I'm legit. Look, he was a 14-year veteran of military and the National Reconnaissance Office, and I think he went out and he talked to enough people, and he believes it. I don't think he's out there like spinning a yarn and is worried that now he's gotten over his skis and he's said too many things, and now I don't know. I don't feel like it's tidy, and maybe the difference between us is I spent a lot of time with the government. And the government is sometimes can be really, really dysfunctional. And it goes back to keeping a secret. The idea that they could have this what essentially is a covert action campaign, to spread disinformation about what they actually know, right? When the easier thing to do is just to have the program if again, if it's the U.S. government's, development of technology, right, and we're doing this, to have the program and just keep your yap shut about it, not go for a disinformation campaign, not try to muddy the waters by doing this, because in a sense, you're just creating more conversation around it. You're creating, now there's a little bit of a, movement within Congress to say we have to do this. Now we have to. So they're going to look perhaps for a misappropriation of funds, right? Because they're not going to pursue like the UAP issue necessarily, right? But they might be interested in pursuing misappropriation of funds. So if you're running a program, if it didn't, again, going back to the idea that it's a U.S. government thing, if you're running a program, that's the last thing you want to do, is because you're doing this program to avoid government oversight. You're not going to create, this alternative narrative that, could generate the sort of publicity or the conversation, particularly up on Capitol Hill, that causes them to then start looking and saying, well, where is money being spent? Right. Because there is a trail there, and that could cause a problem. Yeah.
What are your instincts when you look at it? If I'm looking at it, I'm saying something's wrong. It seems like bullshit. What are your instincts?
Yeah, I think I would like to. I don't think we're going to get there. But my instinct is to say, how do we solve this, or how do we come to some sort of logical resolution, as opposed to saying what is it right off the bat. My instinct is to say, all right, if the all domain anomaly resolution office has 800 cases, then tell us what those 800 cases are. Let's work our way through them, or have a little bit more transparency about working through those cases. Again, you'll probably whittle them down, right? When we were doing Black Files and we were going around talking to people about, various sightings and things, you're basically just crossing things off, going, okay, that was this, that was this, that was this. You find some pretty mundane answers, but you whittle it down to maybe one or two things that you can explain, and then you can investigate those and say, okay, well, all right, let's dig further on these. But right now it's just like all over the map, and they've got so many cases, and they just kind of lump it all together. Are they doing that to obfuscate and create, this situation where it does seem like bullshit? And I don't know, but I think I'm not willing to shut the door on saying that those handful of those few sightings that where we do have technical data, we got video, we got radar lock, we got gun camera footage, whatever it may be, that can't be explained. I'm not willing to close the door and saying, well, it's is it, because who knows? Maybe China's doing the same thing. Oh, we're leading the hypersonic race right now, great, but they've got another program, and they were responsible for the Tic Tac, right? So we have to pursue it, and if that leads us to the doorstep that says, oh, that's a U.S. government program and they've developed the technology, okay. Fine, but I realize that I'm not willing to close the door on saying it could be something else. It could be otherworldly, right? Because I just don't know.
It could be.
I just don't know.
There is
who knows?
That the infinite nature of space, which seems to actually be getting bigger.
Yeah, there was a way of putting it that my wife, who's a hell of a lot smarter than I am, tried to explain it to me, and I kept looking at it like this. But she had heard a program at one point where the person explained it like, okay, imagine how vast the ocean is, right? And how we've explored the ocean, but then you look at space and how immense it is, right, compared to the ocean, right?
Right.
The amount that we've explored in space, right, is equivalent to like a wine glass full of ocean water, right? So you take a wine glass full of ocean water, you look at it and you go, there's nothing there, right? There's all those life forms. There's all those fish in the sea. It's kind of like that. And then, you think about space and you think about what we know and what we don't know, and how we imagine, like our limited capacity to imagine what life outside of Earth could look like. Right. So yeah.
But when you talk of like crashed retrieval programs.
Yeah. That keeps taking me back and is, to this whole idea of, if there was a crash retrieval and reverse engineering program like David Grush talked about and had been in existence for decades, somebody would have fucking opened their yap and talked about it. I think
other than Bob Lazar,
and they would have had some better specifics, right? I mean, that's always the thing. It's always where it falls down. Well, I haven't seen it, but I talked to somebody who knows that it exists, right? And I think maybe it's because we're human, we're programmed to actually want physical evidence,
Yeah.
right? We want to actually see it before we believe it. But, you know, that really hasn't happened yet.
What's one of the things that's fascinating is the narrative has shifted so wildly from it's completely preposterous to credible people like David Fravor and Ryan Graves and all these different people that are talking about multiple sightings, things that completely defy our understanding of what a vehicle is capable of doing, hovering completely motionless in 120 knot winds, all the whole, you know, whatever that thing is, the cube inside a sphere that they keep seeing over and over again.
Right.
Like,
Almost hit one of the aircraft.
Yeah.
You know, and,
the fuck is that?
Yeah. And then they land. So I think, you know, one of the good developments out of all of this, and one of the things that may eventually lead to transparency, right? Because it will provide an avenue for these sightings, whether it's commercial or military pilots, as an example, to report it, right? And to be more, and for the government to take it, perhaps, you know, again, it depends on whether it's a big conspiracy or not, to investigate in a more logical manner and in a more detailed manner. So I think just, again, the sheer act that we're talking about it, which then takes me back to the idea that, you know, if you're running a secret program, you don't want people talking about it, so you're not going to muddy the waters with a false narrative if you don't have to.
Right.
You know, if your concern is that someone's getting close to the truth and you got to do, okay, then maybe so. But, you know.
Do you think it's also possible there are patriots that do think that the American public deserves to know about this information and they have been sitting on it for a long time? That people like David Grush and all these various that are coming out, and more apparently are wanting to come out. But
yeah. Well, interesting thing with Grush is, look, he said so during the hearing, right? He said, I can't talk about that. I could talk about it in a skiff, right? In a sensitive, secure environment. All right. Well, if I'm, you know, one of the people on that subcommittee, I'm going to say, you know what, to my staff, schedule, you know, a skiff meeting with Grush. Get him in here, and let's, you know, have him talk classified shit.
Right.
So that would be the next logical step in all of this.
Have they done that yet?
I don't know. I mean, it's, you know.
When he said, I could talk to you about it in a skiff, have people taken him up on that?
Well, you know, you'd have to ask him. No, I wouldn't know.
Right, and they wouldn't tell anybody.
And therein lies part of the problem, because if he sits there but if he sits in the skiff and continues to kind of say, well, like, you know, okay, I don't, you guys aren't clear to hear this, and I can't. All right. Then you got to start questioning, you know, what he's actually got or what he knows for sure, rather than just having this you know, witness interviews and sort of secondhand information. But I'm much more, I guess the point is, I'm much more interested in the direct sightings than witness interviews. Right.
And the thing about he's not really a witness, right? He hasn't had any personal encounters with anything.
Right.
He hasn't had personal encounter with a craft. He hasn't seen a retrieved craft. He hasn't seen the biological entities. These are all just programs that he's been made aware of that he felt like people needed to know about.
Yeah.
That's the narrative.
And again, not to disparage anybody, right? I mean, look, he's, you know, if in fact, you know, somebody leaked his medical records, which it looks like, you know, did happen, right? Then that's pretty bullshit. Mm-hmm. Somebody needs to figure out what the hell is happening.
Let's see this. The information from Grush, who's unable to discuss specifics on what he told the Pentagon's watchdog arm. Lawmakers want to sit down with the former official in a sensitive, compartmented information facility, a SCIF, to get additional information from him. The group has been blocked, however, by officials that have informed them that Grush doesn't currently have security clearance to discuss the issues in a SCIF, according to Burchett. We think that we'll get there eventually. It's just frustrating. I'm ready to go, and the American public are ready to go, he said. Luna argued that the SCIF with Grush could help lawmakers better understand the type of legislation they need to write regarding UAPs. She said she supports legislation that would declassify information on the phenomenon. So there seems to be some issue of secrecy and what possible to discuss or legal to discuss.
Well, yeah, look, the government casts a very wide net when you're talking about classified information. Right. I mean, the government has overclassified information for decades and decades, right? And you've got secret, top secret, you know, code word, you know, and you know they tend to just hoover everything up and classify it, right? And then it takes fucking forever, right, to go through that process of declassification, and because nobody wants to put their neck out at that point and say, yeah, let's declassify this, right? Once it's in that pot, so. but the question is, great. You're saying you can talk about it in a skiff. Well, damn it, then that's the next. That's what the subcommittee should be doing. Right? That's their job, right? If they're curious, right, and if they're sincere about trying to get to the bottom of this, and that's theoretically their job, then they should. Because again, going back to the main thing, and people can say, well, why are you wasting your time on this? But you can always circle back to the top line, which is it's for national security purposes. We want to know what the hell's going on,
Right?
And if so. Yeah, we'll see. I guess that's the question that should be thrown at Grush, or should be thrown at the subcommittee members.
I'm also shocked how few people care. I feel like people are so overloaded with information today because of social media and because of the news cycle. People are so overloaded with information that this barely registered on people other than UFO nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean there was a surprising amount, I thought anyway, of sort of mainstream media coverage. It wasn't particularly deep, right? It just kind of covered, okay, it was a hearing. And I think they did it because, look, it's UFOs or UAPs, right? Mm-hmm. And so, they knew they'd get some clicks on it if they were putting it online or whatever. And they didn't pursue it, like has been any, I haven't seen any stories that talked about the follow-up with Grush. There were a couple of stories talking about the fact that perhaps his medical records were leaked, as a result.
And the medical records showed what? That he had some sort of a psychiatric condition? That he had an event or something like that?
PTSD, I think he, some suicidal depression issues.
Standard stuff with military veterans.
He had done his time in Afghanistan, right? And so that doesn't, it means nothing, except for the fact that it shouldn't be out there, right? The record should be damn well private.
Well, not only isn't that what we want, why don't you shut your little dinger off there, fella?
Is that me going?
Yeah, that's why your phone rang,
too. What the hell? God,
you got to learn how to use that little switch on the side. But
thank you for my IT lesson.
Isn't that what you want from? I mean, that's the whole purpose of providing these services for veterans. That when they do have suicidal thoughts and they are struggling with PTSD, that they get help. I mean, the idea that they're shaming him and saying that his report is not credible because of this seems ridiculous.
Bullshit. Yeah.
It's totally bullshit.
Yeah, and he said he's come out since and said, look, I did help. I'm in a better place, and he was happy that people were talking about it. They should be talking about it. Look, we lose a shocking number of veterans to suicide, right? And it's disgusting that we don't, that the government doesn't work harder at this, right? And spend more effort. I know a couple of people who do amazingly good work at the VA in terms of counselors, right? They're not managers, they're not executives. They work with the veterans every day, right? And it's incredible what they do. But overall, as a government, our assistance, right, to veterans. I mean, you look at the number of homeless situations. It's pathetic. And so when he talks about it. It's good that he's talking about it, right? I think that transparency helps, and he clearly views it that way too. And he said, look, I don't have any problem with discussing it, but we should be concerned by the fact that somehow his medical records were put out there. And then some people will look at that and go, well, is that the government's effort to discredit him? Or is that somebody's effort to discredit him? I don't know why anybody else would. Why would you do that?
The Joe Rogan Experience.
What did you think about when they attached in the COVID relief bill 180 days for the CIA to release all the information they have about UFOs? Did you see that?
It's one of the things I love about this.
We can go from there.
Oh my God.
We can't be taken seriously that way.
No. But I will say this. I tell people this all the time. They say, why is it so entertaining? I say, because he's curious about everything. He's genuinely curious about everything, and it's a good question. Look, I'm happy that when it comes to UFOs, there's a lot of things that the agency needs to keep off the radar, right? For source methods, right? It's a need to know issue. And frankly, again, going back to what's in the U.S. best interest, for that day when China decides to release all of their intel operations and information, then great. Maybe it's time for us to be transparent. But that's not the way the world works.
Do you think that's what it is? Of it is just secret programs, defense vehicles?
Well, no. What I'm saying is in terms of the UFO thing, a great portion of it is. Yeah, a great portion of it is
50%.
Oh, now the 47% actually. But anybody has said that, that's well known inside the community. No, look, I think it's good because I think look, it's for the same reason the Pentagon released the information about ATIP, about the Advanced Aeronautical Threat Identification Program. I think it's actually good. There's no reason why we shouldn't, unless you are talking about developmental aircraft as an example, right? Which is important because whether you're talking about hypersonic aircraft or missiles or whatever it is, there's some stuff that needs to be kept off the radar screen because there is a tremendous competition going on right now particularly for things like control of space. That's going to be a huge issue, right? Because the weaponization of space. For a long time, people were thinking, space, it's a great exploration and it's good for mankind. And frankly, there is a race to figure out how to weaponize space. And so as an example of what we're talking about, the idea of just saying, we're going to open the books as a country and reveal all our information about developmental aircraft as an example, that's the wrong move, right?
But do you think there are incredible stories, whether it's from Commander David Fravor, who saw that Tic Tac vehicle off the coast of San Diego, or whatever video?
Yeah. If I had to point to one, I would say Fravor.
Yeah.
I would say without a doubt, I'd say the one that if I were somebody who's looking for some redemption, because I've been beating the drum about UFOs and nobody's ever believed me, they always roll their eyes, I would say the one thing that would give them comfort would be the incident with Commander Fravor and that sighting. That's one that I have yet to see an explanation for that makes any sense.
Well, not only that, there's Practit.
Yeah.
Like there's
and
then also it blocked their radar systems, which is an act of war. It actively jammed radar systems. It's not simple as like they saw something, they didn't know what it was. Like they tracked this thing going from I think it was close to 80,000 feet above sea level to one
down,
in 1 second.
Yeah, no signs of pollution.
Yeah,
no heat signatures, nothing. Right, and it was a. Yeah, it's one of those things you look at and you go, okay. And look, the ATIP program made sense in the sense that, if a nation is out there, if the Chinese are out there or the Russians or whomever, and they're developing propulsion capability that we don't know about, then, we should have a mechanism within the Pentagon, within the intel community to understand what that is. Let's research it, let's investigate, right? And so oftentimes, they come to a logical conclusion. The Fravor incident, I have yet to see any information that explains it, right? So that to me, and also, as you pointed out, the way that it was tracked, the verification of it from very credible, individuals, that to me is like the prime example.
and they have video footage of this thing too.
Yes,
and then on top,
and they have gun
Nimitz
camera footage that's incredible.
saying that these things are fairly common, that they're seeing them every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
They were seeing them, and when Fravor's like, "Hey guys, what the fuck is this?" and they're like, "Yeah, you see it?
Yeah.
We've been seeing these things."
And there's no side for somebody like that, a very well-respected, aviator with great experience. There's no upside for these guys to come forward, right? In fact, there's pressure to not, because it's not necessarily good for your career,
Right.
to come in and say, "I think I saw a UFO," right?
What do you think is going?
I don't know. We've talked about that before. I'm not,
I'm trying to get the right. Forget what you said before.
Yeah, I know, right? You forgot about the damn bet. I shouldn't have opened my mouth. I know. I'll go back to that, though. They would have called me out. If Trump comes back and runs, they would have said, "Oh, you owe him $1,000."
Can't wait to get that screaming eagle in here that I'm going to buy.
I'm going to I'll buy it for you with them, and I'll put a little plaque on there to say where it came from.
Big bronze eagle.
I know,
claws
big.
out.
Oh God, I've got one. I gave a speech one for a Veterans Day event, and it was very kind. They gave me this big eagle. I keep it in my office now. It's fantastic. I keep it in the background when I do news segments from my office, and it's like perched over my shoulder.
Nice.
You got to have one in here. Anyway, I don't know.
You think about it at all?
Yeah, I do. In the terms of and like I said, with Black Files Declassified coming up, I just got another plug-in. We're going to do an episode
That's on the
Discovery Channel, and you know what? You can see the entire first season on Discovery Plus. So I think it's foolish to discount these things because there's so much we don't know, right? So, and the idea of thinking that somehow we're the only credible life forms out there, I think is ridiculous. So I think there's a high possibility that that there's, yes, I do think that, but at the same time, then I also question sort of the way that's great. If some alien life force with amazing technology that we can't even fathom right now comes to visit us, then what the hell are they doing? Are they just sort of like watching us just for the entertainment value? Or what? So I'm always puzzled by that part. Like, the idea that, I don't know.
Well, they probably want to observe, but they won't want to interfere. There's probably, if they're super advanced, they probably realize there's a process that intelligent life goes through where there's stages of their evolutionary development in terms of use of technology, understanding of each other, mitigation of war and conflict, and then ultimately entrance into the Galactic Federation. Catch new episodes of The Joe Experience for free only on Spotify. Watch back catalog JRE videos on Spotify, including clips. Easily, seamlessly switch between video and audio experience. On Spotify, you can listen to the JRE in the background while using other apps and can download episodes to save on data cost, all for free. Spotify is absolutely free. You don't have to have a premium account to watch new JRE episodes. You just need to search for the JRE on your Spotify app. Go to Spotify now to get this full episode of The Joe Rogan Experience.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Les Stroud.
Yeah.
He did that show about
Survivor Man Bigfoot, yeah.
but it just went away.
Bro, show. I love Les Stroud. I love him. I love Survivor Man, but that show was so fucking dumb.
Yeah.
He had a guy on the show that is known in the Bigfoot world as being full of shit.
Yeah.
Which is bad. Like, if the Bigfoot world's pretty open-minded. I mean, this is one of the things that I wanted to bring up about that 411 to Hunted thing. There's audio recording that was supposedly taken from the 1970s from Northern California. I want to say Sonoma? I don't remember where it was. It was somewhere in Northern California, but they call them the samurai sounds. The samurai, and it's the weirdest shit ever, man. It's like these guys had this spot that they would go into the mountains, and they would hunt every year. And they built the structure out there, and then they brought recording equipment, and they claimed to have recorded sounds of these animals, these Bigfoot, and that these Bigfoot were around them all the time while they were up there. Now, what's crazy about it is the sounds are so weird. It sounds like someone pretending to be Japanese that doesn't actually speak Japanese. Yeah. Have you ever heard it? No. We'll play it for you. It's because it's the weirdest shit. It sounds so strange and so fake, but, like they have these quote-unquote experts that say the human voice is not capable of making sounds remotely similar to this. The range is, which doesn't make any sense if you know who Michael Winslow is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I know.
That guy that guy went on.
He does a woman peeing when she goes to the bathroom.
He does everything.
Yeah, he does everything.
He did Led Zeppelin. He played Whole Lotta Love with his mouth.
Yeah.
And it sounds incredible. But this samurai sound, like there's these loud whoops, whoops, and these guys are like in the foreground, like the guys who are recording, they're trying to communicate with these things. They sound so calm. I mean, if there really was giant fucking 8-foot apes out there wandering around, like, 200-300 yards away from you, screaming and whooping and talking, would you really, and you're in the woods, would you really be so calm? Wouldn't you be freaking the fuck out with these guys? Do you have it?
Yeah, I'm trying to make sure I find the right thing because I'm stumbling across some traps.
Oh.
Like people are fucking around on the internet.
I wish I could remember the gentleman's name.
Well, I think I have it. That's all I'm saying. So, Ronald J. Moorhead and Alan Berry, maybe? Is that right?
Yes, Ron Moorhead. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's it. The Sierra Mountains. That's what it is. All right. And so, it's the weirdest shit ever. Just listen to this. You're going to...
I read what it could be, but we'll listen first.
It could be bullshit. Yeah, what it could be.
sounds like
No,
saying
no.
all aboard.
Listen. This is hold on. Stop. This is a terrible version
Yeah,
of it.
wow.
There's a better version of it where you can hear the guys really clearly. The people talking. I don't know why that's so scratchy. But they're like, they're over by the lake. Like they're talking like that. And they hear this very strange sound.
And they're being calm about it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
these supposed vocal experts are analyzing it. The human body is incapable of making such sounds. And that area of you got it?
I don't know. It says HD. I don't
Okay,
know if
we'll
it's
hear it.
better.
In for Nightville.
Yeah. They're knocking. That's another thing that Sasquatch do. They knock. That one's weird. Scoot ahead a little bit and hear the samurai sounds. Still sounds terrible. Anyway, these people believe that Les Stroud was balls deep in this.
With that guy.
Deep. Apparently, he had an experience, and I talked to him about his experience. It's pretty interesting. He was in, not with that guy, but he was in Alaska, and apparently he heard some crazy noises, like some monkey sounds outside of his, in the middle of nowhere. No one was anywhere near. And he said he heard something run away, some bipedal sound of something running away. But again, even though he's an experienced woodsman, and he's a guy who's, camped out countless nights in the middle of nowhere and survives in the middle of nowhere and documents it. Like, he's the reason why those survivor shows exist.
Yeah.
Because that guy literally would starve to death and try to eat, like, bark and whatever the fuck he could for 7. You could see his face, like, sinking in. He was losing weight. I mean, he really did do that. He did all sorts of different things to try to survive and then documented how he was doing it and what he would do. But he got obsessed with Bigfoot and then developed that Bigfoot show. And unfortunately, a lot of people lost a lot of faith in him because of that. They're like, no, you're the legit survivor guy, and now you're doing this show, and this is why it's ridiculous. There was one episode of the show where they had this guy who he was with who had video of a Sasquatch, like high-definition video, and it looks so fake.
Yeah.
It's like he's like the Sasquatch is looking at him through the woods, and he's like, there he is. And it's a guy with a mask on.
That's how
I
he
mean,
goes.
it's-
He yells out, "I'm a Sasquatch." You're like, oh god, he just yelled that out.
Oh, yo. Makes the samurai noise.
Bigfoot.
But this, the guy who had the video is known to be like full of shit. And here he's got this guy on his show, and then he, is this real? You be the judge. Like, yeah, I'm going to say it's not real. It's a
Yeah.
guy with a fucking mask on.
I think I did that guy was very not respected
Yes.
in that.
By the Bigfoot community.
Yeah.
The Bigfoot community. Again, very open-minded.
Yeah. Very just everything.
Was other like they would see trees that would fall over like in certain patterns, and they were convinced that Sasquatch was leaning these trees against each other.
I thought it was to let you know where not to go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they had this. I mean, it's all theory, right? This idea
Yeah, I
that
think
the
I've been
reason-
following the wrong guy, dude. I believe all stuff that you like's fake. I'm like, yeah. I only watched that Les Stroud one because of that other guy.
Well, I want to be real. That's the thing.
I do
man.
too.
If someone had a convincing Bigfoot encounter where they caught it on video, where I was like, "Holy shit, what is that? Like, what is that?" Or there was something, but there's nothing. Like I've talked to a lot of those people when I did this show called Joe Rogan Questions Everything for Sci-Fi, and me and Duncan Trussell actually went camping in the Pacific Northwest We didn't really camp. We pretended to go camping, and then we went to a hotel.
Yeah.
And then we
Yeah.
came back the next morning, like, well, rough night of camping.
Yeah.
But we were out there for days trying to look for Sasquatch and talking to people that hunt for Sasquatch. And the one conclusion that we came to is it's a bunch of unfuckable white dudes. Like,
Yeah,
that's
just out there. Yeah.
just out there
Yeah,
camping.
yeah.
It's just, but the desire for it to be real is so strong.
It would change. I watched, like that Finding Bigfoot show. I used to always think, because people are like, why is it on? I'm like, I don't know, man, because it's fun to watch. And if they find him, the world is different now. Like, if they come back with Bigfoot, everything's different.
Everything's different.
Everything's getting different with the alien thing. The fact that they're saying that's like true, you're like, it's a lot, dude. That's a lot to take. If we get, I know that they have the videos and stuff of the aliens, but like if we get up straight up start talking to one, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, here's something that came out today, Jamie. I'm going to send you this because Sagar and Jetty from Rising on the Hill and I have been going back and forth with this, and I found this today and sent it to him. It's I'll send it to you right now, Jamie. It says paradigm-shifting UFO tech that alters space-time is operable. U.S. Navy Chief Tech Officer. So it's some story that I didn't bother looking into because I saw it when I was on my way out the door. And I was like, what in the fuck is this? Because there's been all these sightings of these things that move in a weird way. Paradigm-shifting UFO tech. So there's these things that move in this weird way that don't show any propulsion system. And, due to censorship, please join us on Telegram. Look at this say. Documents obtained by the Drive show the revolutionary technology that has capability to alter space-time may actually be operable, according to the Naval Aviation Enterprise Chief Technology Officer, Dr. James, how do you say that name? Sheehy?
Why
What do you
is
think?
operable in quotes? What is that?
I don't know. Good question. Reflect on why is technology that has the potential to change the entire human experience for the better always used for the defense purposes and military applications? What are the betterments? What about the betterment of humanity? Yeah, I don't know. But it's Christopher Mellon, who's that guy who keeps coming up with all this UFO tech stuff. Can you scroll back up, please?
Someone's just like writing. I was reading through Twitter. It's like a story. It's not really like an article.
Right. Twitter feed of Christopher Mellon, the former Deputy Assistant Defense Secretary for Intelligence from 1997 to 2002. Doing so, I came across an interesting post from the Drive regarding documents they received via the Freedom of Information Act regarding a space-time modification weapon developed by the U.S. Navy, which apparently has already gone through experimental testing. This, in turn, led me to evidence suggesting that other revolutionary type of technology that could no doubt be used to change the world for the better, blah, 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 was already operable. Yeah, I don't know. But this is what, if you pay attention to the UFO world, do you pay attention to that shit at all?
Not like actively.
There's a guy named Bob Lazar. And
I do know that from, because you talked to him.
Yeah. It was one of the weirdest conversations I've ever had. Because you're like, I mean, are you crazy? Are you full of shit? Or is this real?
Yeah.
Because if it is real,
wild.
this thing is a special effect created, a guy who was a special effect artist. Do you remember his name, Jamie, who made this thing for us? This gentleman, he's got a Designs by Perry at Instagram. And he created this thing. And this is like a scale model of what Bob Lazar supposedly worked on. He was hired by the United States military to work at Area S4, which is part of the Area 51, Site S4. Site 4 was this place where he allegedly worked to back engineer these spaceships. And the way these things moved around was exactly how this Christopher Mellon guy, or this article rather, that quoted him as describing, that they used some sort of gravity, space-time bending technology. So they didn't use a propulsion system like a rocket, shoot flame out the back. They bent time in front of them and just would shoot instantaneously to wherever the fuck they wanted to go.
So you'd be like instantly be able to go.
And what's fucked is that there was an instance off of the coast of San Diego in 2004 where a Navy pilot by the name of Commander David Fravor, who I've also had on the show, experienced this thing that they call the Tic Tac UFO. They tracked it with radar. They tracked it with the camera systems on their plane, and they even have video footage of this thing. It went from 80,000 feet above sea level to 1 in a second.
Wow.
That's the amount of time that it takes radar to do the blip, blip,
Yeah.
blip, blip. So in that time, it traveled 80,000 feet. They have no idea how the fuck it did that. It shows no propulsion, heat signature. They took video footage of this thing, and it went from there. It took off where they couldn't even follow it with their eye, just disappeared to the predetermined destination where they were supposed to coordinate later. So it's like it's reading their tracking systems or reading where they were going. And the people that worked on the aircraft carrier were telling the fighter pilot, like, we've been seeing these things over, we see them like every couple of weeks. We have no idea what the fuck's going on.
Yeah.
And they just say, well, there it is. What are we going to do about that?
Yeah. Yeah, I was a picture of an alien in that Tic Tac. He's like, whoa, slow it down, dude. You're kind of crazy right now. Like he's having a bad day in there. Because he's got to be having just a day. Whoever's in there, some kind of day. Maybe having a day. It's a lot to... Yeah, I don't know. You think it's like a lot to just tell people? Like if they had to be like, to tell like just Earth, all of us humans on Earth, to like wrap our head around what would happen?
I think, what do you say if that's all you know? Like if you are the military and all you know is that something can do these things, something can move at this speed. The New York Times had a front page article about it a couple of years ago. And basically they're saying, hey, there are videos of things moving in a way that we don't understand, that aren't exhibiting a heat signature that indicates a propulsion system. We don't know what it is. And then there's the COVID-19 bill that just got passed, and one of the provisions in the COVID-19 bill is that they have 180 days to release all the information they have about UFOs.
That's a lot, yeah.
But I don't know if they're going to do anything with. I think they're going to.
It's funny that it's in this.
They go, yeah, we don't have anything.
COVID-19 bill.
Yeah,
like that's
a lot of weird shit was in the COVID-19 bill, like foreign aid. There's a lot of foreign aid to Pakistan, aid to all these countries. It's like people just to get it passed. They're like, okay, we'll say yes, but I want you to do a little favor for me and put this in the bill.
Yeah,
and there's just shows you how greasy politicians are.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah,
yeah.
But that's allegedly what all that UFO technology is.
What?
Catch new episodes of The Joe Experience for free only on Spotify. Watch back catalog JRE videos on Spotify, including clips. Easily, seamlessly switch between video and audio experience. On Spotify, you can listen to the JRE in the background while using other apps and can download episodes to save on data cost, all for free. Spotify is absolutely free. You don't have to have a premium account to watch new JRE episodes. You just need to search for the JRE on your Spotify app. Go to Spotify now to get this full episode of the Joe Rogan Experience.